Hey, so we are going to talk a little bit about internet noise during this and how it relates to some bigger things happening out in like Cyberland. Before we get to all of that, though, I got a big announcement. I think it's up on the blog already too. But today, actually yesterday, right at the end of the day, we managed to tap into 1,337 tags. Yes, Leet Tag Day was yesterday. And this is incredible. This is incredible work by the entire team of detection engineers, data scientists, everybody here at GreyNoise. We were going to make a big deal about 1,000 tags, but we were like, 1,000 is a boring number. We need a elite number, and so we challenged ourselves to get to this. And I want to kind of show why it's a really big deal before we get into some news stuff. We have just been hitting it out of the park this year, and coincidentally enough, one of the reasons why we have been able to do so much more tagging this year is what Kimber just talked about, Sift. Sift has really given our team bionic powers, and it's helped us get through the millions of payloads that we see a day very quickly. And she explained it, so I'm not going to go any more into that. And just take a look at the progress here. Now, yeah, everyone probably sees that little weird thing going on in 2022. 2022 was a really bad year in general for like everybody, including Ukraine. So there's a bunch of stuff happened out in the world that caused a bunch of CVE drops to happen, which means we made sure we had tags for all those when they actually happened. But this year, all from just what we see in payloads coming at us, we have been able to really just get ahead of it. And probably by the end of this quarter, we're going to be far surpassed all the total number of tags that we had for last year as well. So I'm tickled by this. One of the interesting things about this too is that like when GreyNoise first started and Morris was like in his car and apartment like doing a bunch of stuff, I've obviously populated GreyNoise with all of like the existing known old school things that were out there. So there were a bunch of old garbage and some of the new garbage of that year. Sift has been actually finding a lot of people slinging like vulns from like 1999 and earlier, or sorry, earlier than now, in all the new stuff that we're seeing. So old vulns never die. And Kimber's got some great talks on that. So I hope you get to see her talks like when she does that, because she really like digs into like why the old vulns are out there and what they're actually doing. And just one more thing onto here. These aren't just like, hey, like we see like a new benign actor or something like that. These are real honest to goodness CVE. So our CVE inventory is also going up, which helps folks that are doing vul management and prioritization get their stuff. And like it's like that's rocketed as well right now. So I wanted to take a time to let everyone know we are super excited. I hope you join me and like just being as excited as we are that we got to this point. Sadly, the next cool hacker number is like 31337, and I know, no offense to GreyNoise, I hope I'm not around for 30,000 tags. Like I hope none of us are actually probably hopefully the internet's safer by then. And speaking of the internet being safe or unsafe, I'm going to say two obvious things to everybody right now. The first one is that the internet has substantially changed in both content and behavior. And we said this a couple of times to folks, and the community may have heard this, but just to reiterate, we have noticed, partially due to us, like we've kind of caused our own problem, because we have been kind of good at what we've done over the years. Attackers are changing their behavior. They're no longer doing like mass scans every other day. I mean, the lazy ones kind of been doing that, but the ones that used to do it have realized, oh, GreyNoise catches us. We probably need to change up how we do things. So that's actually caused us to have to think about some things in a different way. You've heard about our new sensors. You probably hear more about that like over the coming weeks too. So we tried to change up how we're doing things and design how we're doing things to kind of meet that. At the same time that the internet's gotten worse or different or changed, the world has actually gotten far more dangerous. You might have noticed some conflicts like across the globe that are actually happening like for the past 2 years and keep increasing in different places. And one thing I wanted to do is like shift into talking about three attacker groups. Don't worry, it's not going to take forever. And I wanted to just point out the operations that they're causing, or that they're taking on, the areas that they're focusing on, what it means for citizens of the globe, citizens of the U.S. as well specifically, and then also like what we've done to change up things so we can make a difference in this space too when it comes to these like super elite cool hacker groups that are actually out there. And Sam can relay any messages that any folks have, so please feel free to drop as many questions as you have. If I can't answer them now, I'll do my best to answer them wherever and whenever you folks are going to be. But I want to start talking about like the area that I think is some of the most disconcerting. And I want to also go back we have this little podcast and video and live stream called StormWatch that we do every Tuesday. And a couple Tuesdays ago, we did a one that was focused on, hey, like, what about these industrial control system threats, these threats to the water and like critical infrastructure sectors? And it was a great conversation. Like the crew there has some fascinating insights, and I wanted to elaborate just a bit on mine in this context because I was making some statements in there that I think some people got a little confused with, which is like, I don't think there are no threats to the industrial control systems and water and wastewater electric grid, all those things. I don't think there's an immediate threat to them. In other words, I don't think there's a lot of threat to attacker groups going every single day, pounding these systems and taking all of our waters and utilities and electric stuff and everything offline. The danger still exists, but for people to do that domestically, it's a lot easier, like to throw like a piece of dynamite or whatever over into the thing and blow up a bunch of things to do stuff than to do cyber things. It's also harder to attribute that to there. But these things are actually under real risk, as we're going to see from at least right now 3 very sophisticated attacker groups with 3 very different nation state supporters of them. And so, like, not only is like the wastewater and water treatment stuff at risk, the grid is at risk as well. The grid's also at risk from just itself these days too. The grid is not exactly like the most stable thing on the planet, as we've seen with all the storms. I live in Maine, so we were without power for a few days with this previous storm too. That's how bad the grid is. And these systems are most certainly in at least internally online in internal networks with a lot of these organizations. And as we're going to see, some of them are kind of silly enough to put them on the internet, or at least put them somewhere internally that is not separated enough so that the attackers can get in there as well too. And you're going to see how this relates to GreyNoise like a little bit towards the end. So a real brief thing with 3 different attacker groups. First is Volt Typhoon. If you do anything in cyber, you probably have not been able to avoid hearing this, because I think every cyber news outlet covered these guys before. So just really briefly on this one, if you want to dig back into some news, the U.S. actually gave a lot of information about this, or like about mid-year last year. We've been hunting for this, and one reason why this group is disconcerting is that they're China sponsored, and actually what do you hear? They're China sponsored. Their entire goal is to get into networks, critical infrastructure, government, et cetera, and just sit there and linger until the right time. And I say the right time, and that's kind of back to the conflict thing we were talking about. There is an interesting Cold War happening with us and China specifically right now. They really want to do some significant things to Taiwan and are still holding back for many reasons are related to what we're doing and trying to prevent them from doing that. They also know that us getting to Taiwan is a haul. Trying to get anything over there is a pretty long haul. So getting boots on the ground, getting military equipment there would be really hard. And the more they can slow that down or cause us to have to look at internal problems that they might create, gives them a leg up to go do what they're going to go do. So they used this group to basically do that, to plant stuff so that they could use at some other time, basically press a button and goodbye whatever water facility or anything along those lines. A bit more disconcerting with these folks about that is they've actually had some successes. There was an action that they took in Hawaii, and it kind of spooked a lot of the spooks because this is where we would launch operations like to go against offensively, at least from like a kinetic capacity, the folks in China, if they were going to do something to Taiwan. And if they could take out enough things there, they could cripple things to the point where we could not do a response in time to have it make any kind of difference. Sure, we could do a cyber response, but then you've got the cyber escalation. That's a whole other topic for a whole other webinar. So I wanted to make you aware, like, this is a real thing, and it may actually happen to your vicinity where you live as a result of these things happening. Who knows when this is actually going to take place or what's going to happen here. It's a really dynamically changing structure out there. Another one that has been come up more recently is the Cyber Army of Russia Reborn. This is the actual proper way to spell it, so all the cyber news outlets probably should get their act together for that one. You've probably seen a lot of information on this very, very recently. These folks have actually done some things as well. Like they actually linked to a breach of a Texas water facility. They're pretty bad folks as well too. Their entire goal is impairment. So where there's other ones may have defacement and some other things, like these ones really want to do impairment, and like in this case, they're they're doing a lot of other things as well. They're doing things mostly for people that support Ukraine and directly against Ukraine, and their sectors are very, very similar to the ones that the other ones have. When they do the defacement, some of the defacement isn't overt, like just writing pro segments. It's actually defacing in a way that is changing the integrity of the site. Like they may make messages that cause you to think one thing is happening when something else is actually happening as well too. And they're actually very active as well too. However, the one thing I wanted to point out as I talk about these very scary groups that are really, really bad people doing all these things and they're super powerful and like whatever. Um, you have to be careful about believing everything that they say because this is not just a cyber warfare game; it's a propaganda game. So Lamont had originally done a piece on one thing that they claimed they did, and one thing that they claimed they did was take out this really big dam. They were all like hyped about it. They really made a big deal about this. And ultimately, what they actually did is they ended up taking out Dave's farm. And I have no idea if the farmer in France was named Dave, but they claimed one thing when they actually had done another, and they stopped a tiny piece of electronics that's associated literally with that dam right there. That's kind of making a creek be able to flow this one way or the other way. So just because they have the capability and just because they claim something, it's very important to not just react immediately to any bad news that you see on the internet about these things. You need to really take a step back. And there's really no need to panic anyway, because you can't do anything about it once it's done, and not just spread misinformation, because the whole goal of this one was to make them look better than they actually were. So it's really, really important to tamper all that kind of stuff down. And the last one that I wanted to talk about today was the Cyber Avengers. They've been around a bit longer, and they're an Iran sponsor group. They care most about doing things against Israel, the United States, or anyone that supports Israel. Their motivation is also like 100% impairment, and they're focused on some of the same sectors, but they're really pretty good at going after water, energy, and general ICS and government sector folks that are out there. The attack types that they tend to focus on are way more varied. So like they'll do everything from phishing campaigns to try to get inside an organization directly to just disabling your ability to pay your water bill if you want to go do something silly like that. I have no idea how they think that is causing any real problem. But also they care a lot about exploiting publicly facing vulnerabilities as well. And one of the most prominent things that was seen, this goes back to like November of last year, they actually managed to get onto one of the Unitronics controllers, which helps these facilities actually maintain and manage all the operations that they have there. And this tiny, tiny little Aliquippa Water Authority did confirm that they were a target, they were hacked, and they claim that there was no risk to the public. That's what anybody's really going to claim for some of these things, unless you have something overt. And so the one thing I wanted to point out here, similar to the other one, so this one, it did actually hit a real water facility. It didn't hit Dave's farm, but it also hit like, and like, if you're from Aliquippa or the Pittsburgh area, I'm making fun of you, but I mean, it's Aliquippa. Like, it's not. This isn't like state of the art. Like, this isn't like a gigantic water facility. This wasn't going to impact tens of millions of folks out there. It was going to impact out there, and like they probably didn't have the best cyber practices that one could possibly have. And I think that's one reason why I also wanted to talk about this, because all three of these groups tend to really just, if phishing doesn't get them into where they want to get into, they're all exploiting very basic like vulnerabilities that we watch and we see every day for other technologies out there. You know, whether it's D-Link routers, whether it's Fortinet routers, whether it's any one of the other kinds of ones that don't bother to keep up and do security stuff ahead of time on their things, they're going to take advantage of those things to try to get in. A lot of times they get into these organizations, they get into the IT environments of these organizations, but then they can't manage to get to the operational technology components that are out there. And that's a good thing. That means there's a really good separation of duties. We've gotten kind of lucky in the US. This wasn't a by design thing. Like all these different water authorities and different parts of critical infrastructure that run things for us every day, they didn't design them with those gaps in place. These things just grew over time from old stuff to new stuff, and they just didn't get around to doing the connections that are out there. As more things do get plugged into the internet, because they're going to get plugged into the internet, and as some of those barriers internal break down over time, because that's what's going to happen. They don't really listen to national standards a lot for these things, despite CISA doing a pretty phenomenal job providing them. This is going to become an increasing weak spot, and as the tensions in the world heat up, because they have been, and they're going to keep doing that, this is going to be something that we need to watch out for. And along those lines, it isn't just going after these facilities. Like, so they are targeting them, like they are going after them. But if you run these things, you could have a direct impact as well too. Like they can easily sling an opportunistic attack at you as easily as they would a targeted attack at these folks, because it literally is just trying to do a Fortinet vulnerability exploit. And in similar fashion, if they do manage to take down a component of critical infrastructure like the grid, it probably will impact your ability or your organization's ability to do business. So you do have some responsibility here to watch what's happening, to kind of make sure that you're all protected from your perimeter, but you also need to have a plan in case this actually does happen. Hopefully your BCDR crews are doing that pretty well, but it's something that you should have top of mind if you're doing any kind of cyber work for your organization. And I guess the last thing before I kind of move on to like what's GreyNoise doing to help in this space is, if you aren't doing what you can to protect your organization, you could be a phishing launch spot for these folks. Like if they come in, they have access to like a really clean email system or a clean email domain, they could use that to legitimately try to get phishing messages, the good ones, through to other organizations out there, or just slurp all the email and craft really good phishing messages against you as well too. So just be careful. These folks are on the prowl. They also farm work out to subgroups as well too. So it's just really important to know that these things are happening and going on out there. Now, I'm saying GreyNoise is ready. I said GreyNoise it has stuff that we can do to help that. And like one of those things you saw was Sift. That's something that we've been using internally since around August of last year to try to get a better handle on that. Again, that's why we have the number of tags that we have. But what we're working on and what we have been working on and what we're rolling out now is our brand new sensor fleet. And with this brand new sensor fleet, it gives us the ability to create all sorts of personas that we're not able to do in a very easy way before. And what I've got up on the screen now is just an example of 3 of the ones that mimic some of these components of critical infrastructure that we just kind of talked about. And we do see hits for these on a regular basis. We see exploits being thrown at these. We see probes from very bad places associated with these when we have our honeypots, when we actually bother to stand these up and have them running out there. So there is a constant awareness to go find these things. They're just waiting for more of these things to pop up on the internet and in the right places. And so that's some of the part about where I say we're ready. So while we have these and we can put them up anywhere, having a PLC that controls stuff, some sitting in like Amazon's cloud, not very convincing to a sophisticated attacker. So we are ready and willing to work with any groups that are out there to put these things homed on the perimeters of portions of critical infrastructure so that we can help get a leg up on these folks that are trying to do these attacks. We can also ourselves try to figure out where some of these things are and get adjacent to them, just to try to get a little bit of a better insight about their frequency and the kinds of attacks that are happening out there. And these are already pre-made ones, but we can also watch for what they're slinging because of Sift. And then when we see that they're going after maybe some new types of technology, go ahead and create either a complete working version of it by getting the software, or standing up our own version of it in a honeypot in a very light way, just to try to be able to see what they're doing and what further things they might do as a result of that. And all this is going to be available to everybody really soon. There's a whole bunch of folks in the early access program, and I know they're onboarding cohorts right now for these. So our ability to really see what's happening is being leveled up significantly with all these new improvements that we've been making. We've got a lot more coming with these. You're going to be able to see a lot more with Sift. A ton more tags are going to be coming on the way. And really, like, this has just been one of the funnest times to work at GreyNoise, because we are literally making the internet a safer place every single day and every single improvement that we actually make. I tried to leave enough time for questions, so if anyone does have any questions, Sam, fire them away at me.
Yeah, let's see. So, interesting kind of discussion point that came up, or at least a place to, or something to discuss, came from Emily Austin. They asked, some of this activity seems trivial, but thoughts on these being practice or trial runs for larger operations?
I think some of the trivial ones are totally there for them to just claim credit that they can do things and to prove that they have the capability to hack into them. And it could be trial run, it could be practice. I think it's just them doing something overt so that they can get headlines in the news and people can go, ooh, scary. I am more concerned about the ones like Volt Typhoon, where the government figured out this was a campaign going on, but now they're just sitting dormant in places. Who knows where they're sitting dormant in organizations? Really good place to sit is a printer. So I mean, if any threat actors are listening, you should just sit on a printer, because no one watches the printers and stuff out there to do that. And being able to launch from there or doing operations from there to try to get into the OT environment. And like so, and that's so to Emily, like my biggest concern now is that plus I think we're going to see more of these shops put stuff on the internet. I just think the convenience of it, the need to do like remote to it because of the way that jobs are shifting and the way that the whole like workplace stuff is shifting, even in this sector, or even in these critical infrastructure sectors. I'm really afraid that and if we see it, I also know Emily is. So if we see it, Emily's going to find them because she'll be able to scan the internet and tell us that they're there. But yeah, so it's like I'm not like super scared, but the Volt Typhoon thing really spooked me a bit, and I've read some things in the past week or two that make me understand this is kind of really real. So
We've got one last question. It looks like our next speaker, Santiago, just joined, so I'm super excited to get into his talk in just a minute or so. But last question came from Tom. They asked, do you have any insights into APT groups that don't align perfectly with Pentagon geopolitical analysis?
So right now, this may change in the future. We do our best to not be in the attribution business because that's kind of a dangerous business, and it's also fraught with peril. A lot of times, people that do attribution get it really wrong. What I can say, so the answer, the technical answer, the actual full answer is no. The partial answer, or maybe the extended answer, is we have now begun to group the CVEs that the various attacker groups do use, so the various APTs do use. We do have internal views of those that we monitor on a regular basis, and we're trying to put some stuff in place that watch what the behavior of those things look like and the IP addresses that go against them, just the behaviors there, especially when we have the new sensor fleet fully online. That will probably give us the ability to give you more insight into what the groups might be going after versus the ones that you're talking about online there. But we try to stay out of even then, we're just going to go groups that look like this, do these things, because we really try to not be in the attribution business.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much, boB. If you're watching us live on YouTube, please give some chat emojis or sorry, clap emojis in the chat. But thank you so much, boB. Really appreciate your time today. It's awesome for you to join us for the first NetNoiseCon.
It's awesome. I'm so glad you put this together. Everyone, go bring the noise on. This is gonna be a great day. Have fun.